Hello, this is Max from Ewoks, and today I would just like to say, May the 4th be with you. Today is May the 4th on 2013. It's National Star Wars Day, and yeah, I guess today we'll be talking about Star Wars. It's one of my favorite topics ever since I was a little kid. Love Star Wars. I watched the first one hundreds of times and probably quote the movie while watching it, right? But I'm sure that even some of the lowliest Star Wars fans could probably do that. Alright, so May the 4th, Star Wars. Let's see, what can we talk about? Disney, I'm sure anybody who has been paying attention to Star Wars and Lucasfilm, LucasArts, knows that Disney acquired LucasArts, or Lucasfilm, a while ago, at the beginning of this year, I think. And they're planning on reviving the movie series with not 3 movies, as people have heard, but 5. There's going to be 5 Star Wars movies in the span of 5 years. So 1 movie a year. They're going to make episode 7, 8, and 9. But in between them, so I guess that would be more like this. 7, 8, and 9. Doesn't look good. Okay. They're going to be making a Boba Fett movie. And they're also going to be making a Yoda movie. Or about Yoda's master and the origins of Yoda and the Jedi and things like that. So that seems like it's going to be kind of neat. I'm not sure exactly what to expect from that. I personally don't think that we need to see Yoda's backstory. I'm sure there's lots of people who probably want to know what Yoda looked like when he was young and who Yoda's master was. But we don't need to know that Yoda was a great Jedi who taught Anakin and Luke Skywalker stuff. We don't need to know what he ate for like lunch one day back when he was 12. It doesn't make a difference. Okay? That's just my opinion, though. It could still be a good movie. But I just think it's irrelevant. Then there's Boba Fett. Now that sounds like it's going to be an interesting one. I personally would like it if what they did with the Boba Fett movie was to separate it from the episode 2 Boba Fett that they kind of tried to recreate, the one that they put into the new remastered versions of Star Wars. Because, I don't know what you think, but to me, Boba Fett isn't Australian. I'm sorry to people in Australia who are now probably sitting there like, what? What did you just say? Boba Fett's not Australian. That's my horrible Australian accent for the moment, right? Oh, that was a flu, sorry. And, yeah, no. Boba Fett had this really raspy voice from what I remember, right? Back in The Empire Strikes Back, so there's no use to me dead. Yeah. Okay, that almost sounded identical to my Australian accent. Maybe he is Australian, I don't know. But, the voices, he was different, right? Like, so George Lucas, or whoever, right? They did make the new, I think, Blu-ray or DVD version of Star Wars, and in it, Boba Fett's voice has been updated to have the same voice as the actor of Jango Fett from Episode 2. So he's the same Australian guy. And, yeah, I really don't think that they really don't need to do that. I mean, is George gonna go back, track down the holiday special, and find that cartoon segment where Boba Fett was introduced, and reintegrate the Australian voice? Probably not. Probably not. And why? Why would he want to do it in the first place? I don't get it. Are there going to be new copies of Shadows of the Empire? Right? Where Boba Fett's voice is now the new Australian guy? No. Okay, I'm getting too caught up on this one part. Okay, but Boba Fett movie, that's gonna come out. It could be neat. It could be neat. Kind of reminds me of what I'm going to talk about next, actually. I'm going to talk about Star Wars movies that are not Star Wars. Right? I'm sure that everyone knows, when you think of Star Wars movies, the first thing you probably think of is A New Hope, Star Wars, or Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, right? Etc. But there are some Star Wars movies that people don't really think of. It doesn't come to mind right away. And some people don't even really realize or recognize that it's a Star Wars movie. The first one I'll talk about, briefly, is E.T., the Extraterrestrial. Now, not many people realize that E.T. takes place in the Star Wars continuity universe, even though it happens on Earth. Yes, you heard me. E.T. is a Star Wars movie. Okay. I'm going to wait a second because I'm sure you've just passed out or something. Let's wait till the oxygen reaches your head. Okay. Are you back? Okay. E.T. Okay. Oh, man, he fell asleep. Oh. Okay. E.T. Wake up. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Star Wars movie. How do I know this? Well, first I will use a reference outside of E.T. In, I believe, Star Wars Episode 2, although it could have been 3, one or the other, in the Republic, or the Senate, you know, the place with all the floaty discs that everyone talks and such. Anyway, so one of those discs has representatives on it, which are the same species as E.T. from the movie. You can see them standing there with their hands out like this. You know, they clearly are the exact same. Maybe it was an Easter egg, but it goes further. So now let's go to the movie E.T., where in it, E.T. goes to, I believe, a Toys R Us. And in the Toys R Us, sees Star Wars merchandise. He sees a Yoda toy and recognizes it. He points towards it and recognizes Yoda. Now, that might sound silly. How could a universe, like a fictional universe, in its own continuity, recognize itself in a fourth wall kind of way? Well, did you ever see the Star Wars Holiday Special, where it shows that across the galaxy there are cartoons that the kids across the galaxy watch, starring Luke and Han and Chewie and the main characters of the Star Wars movies, and getting into trouble. That's how Boba Fett was actually introduced into the Star Wars series. So there's a little bit of that. E.T., Star Wars movie. Probably didn't know that. Now you do. And the movies that I wanted to talk about, I was watching these yesterday in anticipation for today. And what I was watching was Caravan of Courage and Battle for Endor. Now, the second one is probably a bit more obviously a Star Wars movie. I mean, it's got Endor in the title, right? And so that immediately probably makes people, think of the Battle of Endor on Return of the Jedi, right? Well, these movies are Ewoks. The Ewoks movies. So it's not Star Wars, it's Ewoks. One of the main Ewoks is Wicket, played by oh wow, I know his name. He's on Idiot Abroad. You should watch that show. Davis? Oh man, this is going to kill me. Warwick Davis, good actor. Uh, he plays Wicket in the movie. He reprises his role from Return of the Jedi. And the first one, Caravan of Courage, is about a family who crash on Endor, and the mother and father get abducted by a giant monster called the Gorax, and their children, Mace and Sindel, are left alone to deal for themselves. They get found by the Ewoks, who rescue them and realize that Sindel is a child, and they bring her in. But Mace, because he's the older protective brother, he comes in and with a gun, and he's very aggressive towards the Ewoks, and the Ewoks they tackle him and they take him down, kind of like in Return of the Jedi. Remember how Princess Leia, how she was treated kindly by the Ewoks because she was gentle and approached them in a gentle, peaceful way, but yet Han and Chewie and Luke, they were responded to a little bit differently because their first reaction was to pull guns out, and they were also in a trap that was meant for wild animals and food, right? So there's lots of different reasons why one was treated one way and one was treated the other way. There was also the whole feast in C-3PO's honor, but let's not even get into that. This is getting off topic. So in Caravan of Courage, Sindel, the little sister, begins to get sick, and they need to go and find a special plant to help her get better. So Mace and the other Ewoks search through the forest, and eventually they find some medicine for her, and she recovers. So they need to find their parents, and they ask the Ewok shaman, and he uses his magic box, spins it around like a dreidel, until it shows them their parents hanging in a cage, and the Gorax, torturing them. And then they go find their parents, and that's the end of the movie. And it was a made-for-TV movie. It's pretty cheesy. It's made in the 80s. Although I do think that it's a good movie. It's good to watch because it has nice character development, and it's good for an expansion into the Star Wars universe. I mean, if you just want something that's set in the universe and it's not necessarily the exact same story you've been watching over and over again, I would definitely recommend picking up Caravan of Courage. And then there's the sequel. Now, when I was younger, I only had the sequel, Ewoks Battle for Endor. And for years, decades, up to this point yesterday, I didn't even know Caravan of Courage existed. So that's why I watched it yesterday. I thought that Ewoks Battle for Endor was its own movie, standalone, and that was it. But I was wrong. So now, Ewoks Battle for Endor. So it picks up, I believe it's about a year later, maybe 2 years later. Time has passed because Sindel is considerably older. She's a good chunk taller. Mace looks like, in the first movie he looks like he was in junior high. Now he looks like he finished high school, kind of thing. So some time has passed, and in this movie the Ewoks have learned to speak the same language as the family. In the first movie, they only spoke the Ewokese, or whatever it's called. And in this movie, some of the Ewoks have learned to speak whatever language they're speaking, because it's not the same language as in Star Wars. So the movie starts off with Wicket and Sindel, and they're searching around for berries, just having fun. And then the Ewok village gets attacked by these raiders. who are also on the planet and have been there for decades. So they kidnap the Ewoks. They kill Sindul's parents and Mace. So all the other characters from the first movie are dead. The only one that's left is Sindel and Wicket, pretty much. And they're all captured and scooped up and put into a big wagon to be carried away to the Raiders' castle. There's never really much of an explanation of what they're going to do with the Ewoks. I think they're just going to kill them. But I don't know. They're just kind of, the bad guys in this movie kind of remind me of orcs from Lord of the Rings, but with a little bit of a Star Wars spin to it. They're kind of like Tusken Raiders and orcs put together. So Sindel and Wicket come up with this idea to escape, and they break out of the wagon and run away, and eventually they hide in a cave, and there's a pterodactyl or something, and the pterodactyl grabs Sindel and flies off, and Wicket, like MacGyver, grabs some bones and some spare leather off of the ground and makes himself a hang glider, and he starts chasing after them in the middle of the sky until he gets underneath so here's the hang glider, and here's the pterodactyl, and he gets underneath it, so that way Sindel can drop through the hang glider, and then they crash into the trees in California. So now that they've escaped from the Raiders, they've escaped from the pterodactyl thing, where do they have to go from here, right? So they try to make themselves some shelter, they try to make themselves safe, and they stay safe for a night. And then they meet a teak named Teak. Yes. There's a creature called a teak, and its name is Teak. Trust me, it's not a Pokemon, but it could be. Very easily. Okay, so this little guinea pig gopher thing that's kind of like from Caddyshack. It kind of causes mischief and plays with them for a little bit, and messes around with Wicket, and makes friends with Sindel, and leads them to a cabin. So there's this cabin in the middle of the woods that's been entirely abandoned as far as I know, and it's full of pans and old stuff, and they start cleaning it up and start making pie and things and food and having fun and having a party until the door opens and an old man walks in. Now, okay, I don't know the actor's name. I'm going to admit ignorance on this one. But he's the guy from, like, the diabetes commercials who would always be like, "You got diabetes? I got diabetes." You know? And there's a couple scenes in the movie where he runs up to them, and he's just like, like, "What are you guys doing?" And then I'm just sitting there and just looking at him, just like, oh, he's giving the audience diabetes. So Noah is his name, right? And this is probably one of the greatest Star Wars characters ever, okay? Nowhere else in Star Wars are you going to find a guy with glasses and a walking stick who will fight a guy with a sword, okay? This guy is badass, right? He makes Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first movie look like just some other old guy, okay? This guy, he did it. He did it awesomely. So Noah, he's a grumpy old man, and he kicks them all out. They're all outside, and Sindel and Wicket start making a fire, and then he puts out their fire, tells them they need a fireplace, and brings them back into the house. Lets them stay there for a couple days, and eventually one of the villains, who's this witch with a magic ring, she can turn herself into things. Like at one point she turns herself into a crow, Another point, she turns herself into a woman with blonde hair and a white gown on a horse to try and trick Sindel. This is where this is going. She tricks Sindel by singing the song that her mother sang to her, and captures her and brings her back to the bad guy to try and tell the bad guy how to use the power generator that was in her parents' ship, because they're trying to escape the planet as well. So now Wicket realizes that she's missing and wakes up Noah, and they all start gearing up and getting ready to go. And they break into the bad guy's castle. They grappling hook their way in, and they climb it up just like Batman and Robin, you know. And so they go in, and now this is what I find interesting. In this movie, I'm pretty sure you actually get to see the first on-screen depiction of Sabak. Sabak is a card game in the Star Wars universe. In fact, it is the card game very much like poker. It was the game that Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon in with Lando. They were playing Sabak, and that's how he won the Millennium Falcon. I'm pretty sure. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. And so they're playing Sabak, and Teak, he runs up to these two guys, and he sticks a card in one of their sleeves, and then he sticks a card in the other one's sleeves. So when one of them is winning, he grabs his winnings, and the card falls out, and the other one pulls out a gun on him, and then the other guy pulls out a gun on him, and they both shoot each other. So then Teak grabs the keys and lets out all the Ewoks, and the Ewoks escape. But this, brings attention to some guards, and they chase them down back to the Ewok village and to Noah's spaceship, which he's gotten the power generator for, plugged it in, and now it's starting to work. So the Ewoks, with Noah's help, try to fight off the raiders who've got blasters and swords and things. Like, these guys are brutal. These guys are pretty deadly. Now, compared to Return of the Jedi, I can actually kind of believe this battle scene. Because these guys aren't completely covered head to toe in armor that's all teched out, and every single one of them with a laser gun, right? Like stormtroopers were. These guys are just like Tusken Raiders, where like maybe every like second or third guy has like a really, really cruddy looking blaster that's like barely held together by a piece of fur. Yeah, like it's pretty ragtag. And on the opposite side, the Ewoks have a spaceship sitting there blasting at them. So, I mean, it helps. It helps. So in the end, the bad guy shows up, right? He's got his sword and grabs Sindel, and he tells Noah, give me the power, you'll have the girl. Huh? And man goes, okay, alright, put her aside, and you can settle this. So he puts it over the girl and pulls out his sword, and Noah pulls out his stick. He starts dueling this guy with his walking stick. Now, at one point, the witch, she tries to escape by turning on her ring, but the bad guy, he snatches her ring from her in the middle of the process, so she turns into a bird, but she can't turn back. So she's now stuck as a bird on Endor. And he's now wearing her ring as a necklace. So Wicket, in the middle of this fight with Noah and the bad guy, he takes out his sling, throws it into the ring on the guy's neck, activating it. And the guy, he starts to glow red and starts to burn up. And then he gets left as like a carbon ash pillar of himself, kind of like that, staring at the ring. So then Noah, and Sindel, they clean up the ship, they say their goodbyes, and then they fly off and they leave Endor, and they live happily ever after. And that is the Ewoks Battle for Endor movie. Now, I don't think I have very much else to talk about for May the 4th Star Wars Day, so I think I'm just going to end this note with, May the Force be with you. And don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force. Take it easy.
Ada. Thank you for building a fire. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
You know what? You're my best friend.
Yes, best friend.
All right, what are you two little wood rats trying to do?
Give everyone diabetes?